At this exact moment in time, you exist as more than a single entity. You are infinite possibilities, all coexisting simultaneously, awaiting your conscious selection of which will materialize into reality. This isn't spiritual conjecture or wishful metaphysics. This is quantum superposition, the scientific principle that particles exist in multiple states concurrently until observed, whereupon they collapse into a singular defined state. You function identically. You are quantum mechanics in living form. Each morning as consciousness returns, you hold the potential to embody anyone. The assured guide, the innovative visionary, the serene sage, the prosperous architect. All these variations of your being exist now in what quantum physics identifies as the field of potentiality. Yet here's the pattern. Within moments of consciousness returning, you default back to the identical version of yourself. The known entity, the secure identity, the one carrying forward yesterday's struggle and anticipating tomorrow's challenges. Consider this revelation. When quantum researchers initially discovered particles existing in multiple states simultaneously, they were astounded. How could an entity occupy two positions at once? How could an electron manifest as both wave and particle? Yet experiment after experiment confirmed this reality. And here's the transformative insight. You operate under identical universal laws. You exist as pure potential until the moment self-observation collapses you into a single identity. The version reading these words represents just one possibility that materialized. But alternate versions await. The one already experiencing everything you desire. The one who released what no longer serves their highest good. The one who embraced possibility when your current self declined. They all exist. They all remain accessible. They all are expressions of your fundamental nature. That persistent weight you've been carrying. That intuition that transformation is needed, yet the path remains unclear. That isn't confusion. That's awakening awareness. It's your consciousness recognizing the repetitive pattern of collapsing into identical expressions of self day after day, like a melody stuck in perpetual loop. You sense these alternative potentials beckoning. You perceive them in your most silent moments, in your dreamscapes, in those brief seconds between slumber and wakefulness when your programmed identity temporarily dissolves. But then the pattern initiates. Your eyes register light. Your feet connect with the floor. And instantly, you default to the familiar configuration. Identical thought patterns, identical emotional states, identical behavioral responses. This collapse happens without conscious direction. It occurs so rapidly, so automatically, that awareness of alternatives never emerges. Your physical form remembers how to be the previous version of you before conscious thought even activates. If this understanding resonates deeply within you, press the like button in this moment. This deliberate action creates energetic entanglement between your consciousness and this frequency of transformation, catalyzing collapse into your highest expression. Every single dawn, you experience quantum collapse without conscious recognition. In those initial fragments of awareness before memory reinstates, before identity reassembles, before your narrative reloads, you exist as pure potential. You embody the quantum field itself, unbounded and undefined. Then a trigger occurs. A thought surfaces, responsibilities await. An emotion arises, that familiar heaviness or anxiety. In that instant, you transition from infinite possibility to specific identity. Quantum physicists term this the collapse of wave function. When a quantum system undergoes observation, it transitions from all potentialities to one actuality. And you, magnificent being, represent the most complex quantum system in known existence. Your consciousness functions simultaneously as both observer and observed. You witness yourself collapsing into form with each new day. If this insight resonates within your quantum core, type "I choose" in the comments section. Let these words become your declaration to the universe that you're transitioning from unconscious to conscious selection of which version of yourself manifests. This process transcends mental activity. Your entire physical system participates in this collapse. Your cellular memory retains yesterday's programming. Your nervous system has encoded your emotional patterns. Your heart has established its characteristic rhythm of apprehension or enthusiasm. Before your first conscious thought forms, your body has already selected which version of you to manifest. It defaults to the familiar pattern, the secure configuration, even when that pattern generates discomfort. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research revealed something profound about this mechanism. By age 35, approximately 95% of who you experience yourself to be consists merely of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, perspectives, beliefs, and perceptions. You're not fully living, you're executing programming. You're not consciously choosing, you're automatically repeating. Each morning offers the potential to collapse into any expression of self. Yet you default to yesterday's version because that's what your biological system recognizes. Here's what's truly fascinating. The moment preceding collapse, that state of superposition where all potentials exist simultaneously, that's where true power resides. That's where choice emerges. That's where transformation becomes possible. Yet most rush through this moment so rapidly, they never recognize it. We default into our established identity before recognizing alternatives existed. Researchers studying quantum mechanics discovered that observation doesn't merely reveal reality, it generates reality. Observer and observed aren't separate entities. They form one integrated system, co-creating each other. When you observe yourself through the filter of your history, you collapse into that history. When you observe yourself through the lens of limitation, you collapse into that limitation. But what transformations might occur if your observation shifted? Your body doesn't simply remember your past, it actively reconstructs it. Every cell functions as a quantum processor, storing not only biological information, but energetic patterns, emotional frequencies, and identity coding. After years experiencing yourself consistently, feeling familiar emotions, thinking repetitive thoughts, your cellular structure becomes conditioned to specific biochemical signals. Fear generates certain hormones. Anxiety activates specific neurotransmitters. Doubt initiates particular biochemical cascades. And your cells, these remarkable intelligent quantum processors, develop dependency on these chemical messengers. They literally crave the biochemistry of your established identity. So when your conscious mind declares, "I desire change," your trillion cells respond, "Provide what we recognize." This explains why transformation feels challenging. You're not merely changing thought patterns. You're requesting your entire biological system undergo withdrawal from its familiar chemical environment. You're asking every cell release its dependency on being who you've always been. Like any withdrawal process, discomfort arises. Your body responds with signals of distress, anxiety, even panic. Not because you're making mistakes, but because you're creating something different. Here's something truly revolutionary that isn't widely discussed. When quantum systems undergo change, they go through what physicists call quantum tunneling. This represents the ability for particles to pass through energy barriers that classical physics would deem impossible to traverse. Your consciousness has this identical capacity. When transformation seems impossible from your current perspective, quantum tunneling allows you to jump into a new state of being without necessarily walking the full path between states. This is why sometimes transformation can happen instantaneously rather than gradually, defying our linear understanding of change. Dr. Bruce Lipton's research demonstrates something remarkable. Your cells don't merely respond to your thoughts, they become your thoughts. When you think identical thoughts repeatedly, your cells restructure to facilitate thinking that thought again. Neural pathways strengthen, synaptic connections multiply. Your brain physically reconfigures to make established patterns more efficient. You become a biological monument to your habitual self. But here's where quantum superposition becomes your greatest ally. Just as particles exist in multiple states simultaneously, your cells possess the capacity to exist in multiple emotional states, multiple biochemical environments, multiple realities concurrently. They aren't permanently locked into singular patterns. They can learn new expressions. They can respond to new rhythms. They can become conditioned to joy as readily as they became conditioned to fear. The scientific term for this is neuroplasticity, but it's actually quantum mechanics at work in your biology. Each time you select a different thought, experience a different emotion, or take a different action, you're collapsing into a slightly different version of yourself. Do this once, and your established pattern reasserts like an elastic band. But practice this repeatedly with intention and awareness, and something transformative occurs. Your cells begin anticipating the new pattern. They begin craving the new biochemistry. They begin reconfiguring themselves around your emerging identity. Beyond neuroplasticity, we now understand a process called quantum coherence, occurring in biological systems, where particles within your cells can maintain synchronized wave functions. When you consistently maintain a new state of being, your entire body begins to achieve quantum coherence around this new state, making it increasingly easier to maintain as the individual cellular oscillators of your body synchronize to the new frequency. This is why transformation has a tipping point, where suddenly it becomes easier to be the new you than to revert to the old patterns. Quantum physics has validated what ancient wisdom traditions articulated for millennia. A singular reality doesn't exist. Infinite realities exist simultaneously, all coexisting, all equally valid, all awaiting consciousness to collapse them into experience. This isn't theoretical conjecture. This is scientific fact demonstrated in laboratories worldwide. In the renowned double-slit experiment, researchers directed electrons toward a barrier containing two openings. When unobserved, the electrons behaved as waves, passing through both openings simultaneously, creating an interference pattern. But when observed, they collapsed into particles, selecting one opening or the other. The implications are profound. Reality exists as potential until consciousness selects which version materializes. You live this experiment in every moment of existence. Your life manifests as waves of potential until observation collapses it into specific experience. The relationship you're currently in represents one collapsed potential. The work you perform, another collapsed potential. The health you experience, the abundance you access or lack, the joy you feel or don't feel, all represent collapsed potentials from an infinite field of possibility. String theory extends this understanding further, proposing at least 11 dimensions of reality, most beyond perception through physical senses. But consciousness isn't limited to sensory perception. Consciousness navigates these dimensions, senses alternative possibilities, perceives the gravitational pull of parallel realities where different versions of ourselves experience different existences. Have you experienced moments where you sensed life could diverge in completely different directions? Standing at crossroads, feeling two futures simultaneously pulling your attention? That isn't imagination. That's consciousness perceiving the quantum field, sensing different realities available to you, awaiting your selection of which to collapse into experience. This explains why sometimes you experience living the wrong life. Because in a quantum sense, you are. You've collapsed into a reality misaligned with your highest potential. You've unconsciously continued collapsing into a version of yourself created through past conditioning, past limitation, past fear patterns. But those alternative versions, the confident one, the successful one, the joyful one, they continue existing. They remain accessible. They continue calling to you from the quantum field. Every moment contains a pause, a breath, a space where all possibilities exist before one manifests. Quantum physicists call this the superposition state. Ancient traditions named it the gap between thoughts. Contemporary explorers call it the zero-point field. Whatever terminology you prefer, it represents the most powerful position in existence because that's where choice originates. Most rush through these moments without recognition. We awaken and immediately default to our familiar identity. We encounter challenges and instantly collapse into habitual responses. Someone triggers reactivity, and we automatically collapse into programmed reactions. We transition so rapidly from possibility to actuality that awareness of choice never emerges. But what if you could expand that moment? What if you could extend that space between stimulus and response, between potential and collapse? What if you could witness yourself in the act of selecting which version of yourself to become? This represents the true purpose of meditation. Not emptying the mind, but dwelling in that space of pure potential before collapse. This defines authentic presence. Not just being here now, but being aware of all possibilities existing in this now. This reveals what consciousness truly offers. Not just capacity for thought, but ability to choose which reality your thoughts manifest. In this precise moment, as you process these words, you exist in superposition. Part of you remains skeptical. Part of you feels hopeful. Part of you experiences fatigue. Part of you feels energized. Part of you yearns for transformation. Part of you seeks security in the familiar. All these versions are authentic. All these versions are valid. But in the next moment, you'll collapse into one. Which will you select? This choice doesn't occur once. It happens thousands of times daily. Every thought represents a collapse. Every emotion represents a collapse. Every word spoken, every action taken, every reaction experienced, all represent moments where you collapse from infinite potential into specific reality. And most frequently, you collapse into identical patterns, identical identity, identical limited expressions of self. If you sense this shift beginning, affirm below, I am possibilities. Let writing these words anchor your consciousness in superposition, in that space of infinite potential preceding collapse. Your nervous system has mastered the art of collapsing you into your familiar identity. It happens so rapidly, so automatically, that awareness of choice never surfaces. Something occurs. A financial obligation arrives. Someone offers criticism. An opportunity presents itself. And before conscious consideration, you've already collapsed into predictable response. Your body automatically generates specific chemicals, tensions specific muscles, triggers specific thought patterns. This automatic collapse mechanism creates limitation. Your circumstances don't create confinement. Your nervous system's addiction to collapsing into identical patterns creates confinement. You've practiced being yourself so extensively that your body executes the pattern without conscious involvement. You've attained mastery at being who you've always been. But mastery can redirect. The same nervous system automatically collapsing you into limitation can train to automatically collapse you into expansion. The same body conditioned to familiar chemicals can learn to crave elevated emotional states. The same neural pathways firing in predictable sequences can rewire to fire in new, empowering configurations. This is where genuine transformation begins, not through increased effort or self-pressure, but through awareness of the moment preceding collapse. When familiar emotions arise, can you pause? When habitual thoughts appear, can you question them? When your body prepares to react in programmed ways, can you choose differently? Initially, this feels impossible. The gravitational pull of the familiar is overwhelming. Your cells demand their chemical requirements. Your neural pathways function like deeply carved channels that thoughts naturally follow. But each time you pause, each time you choose differently, you weaken established patterns and strengthen new ones. You're literally reconstructing yourself at the quantum level. Consider this metaphor. Your established identity functions like a gravitational field with its own attraction force. It pulls everything into its influence. Every thought, every feeling, every experience gets pulled into the gravitational field of who you've always been. But consciousness exerts more power than gravity. Awareness wields more influence than automation, and choice, conscious choice, can escape even the strongest pull of established patterns. If you're prepared to escape the gravitational field of your previous self, subscribe now. This creates a quantum bridge between your consciousness and this transformational frequency, ensuring continued reception of the energetic transmissions supporting your ongoing evolution. When you decide to stop collapsing into your previous identity, your physical system experiences shock. It's been generating identical biochemical formulas for years, perhaps decades. Cortisol upon awakening when contemplating responsibilities. Adrenaline midday when reviewing financial status. A mixture of worry hormones before sleep. Your body knows this formula completely. It's become your biochemical signature, as unique as genetic coding. Now suddenly, you're requesting your body stop this production. You're refusing to provide the stress chemicals it's dependent upon. You're withholding the familiar emotional states it craves. And like someone eliminating caffeine or sugar, your body protests. You might experience anxiety without apparent cause, irritability without clear trigger. Your body literally experiences withdrawal from your established identity. This explains why many abandon transformation efforts. They interpret these uncomfortable sensations as indicators something's wrong, that returning to established patterns is necessary. But these sensations actually confirm transformation is progressing. Your established identity is dissolving at the cellular level, and dissolution, even of what no longer serves highest good, creates temporary discomfort. But here's the beautiful aspect. As your body releases dependency on established chemical patterns, it becomes receptive to new ones. Gratitude generates different hormones than fear. Joy creates different neurotransmitters than anxiety. Love floods your system with chemicals that heal rather than harm, and your cells, these brilliant quantum processors, can learn to crave these new chemicals just as intensely as they craved the old ones. Most people are never taught about what quantum biologists call cellular memory transmutation. This phenomenon explains how your cells can actually accelerate their adaptation to new biochemical states when you provide them with conscious intention and energy. By directing attention to the cells that are struggling with the transition and consciously speaking to them, telling them they are safe in this new state, you can significantly reduce the withdrawal period and help your body adapt more quickly to your new frequency state. The transition period typically spans about 21 to 30 days. That's the duration required for your body to break its chemical addiction to established emotional states. During this phase, you exist in quantum flux. You're neither your previous self nor your emerging self. You're in superposition, existing as pure potential, prepared to collapse into something unprecedented. This represents sacred time. This is when you're most powerful, most creative, most capable of authentic transformation. Don't rush through it. Don't attempt to make it comfortable. Allow yourself to exist in the uncertainty, in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. This is where miracles materialize. This is where you discover you were never as solid as you perceived. You were always fluid, always changeable, always capable of collapsing into something magnificent. In quantum mechanics, a principle exists that shook scientific understanding to its foundation: the observer effect. Simply stated, the act of observation alters what's being observed. An electron doesn't occupy definite location until someone observes it. A particle doesn't select its state until consciousness collapses it into reality. Observer and observed aren't separate entities. They form one integrated system, creating each other in every moment. You function simultaneously as observer and observed in your own existence. How you observe yourself determines which version of you collapses into reality. When you observe yourself through the filter of your wounds, you collapse into wounded reality. When you observe yourself through the lens of your power, you collapse into empowered reality. The observer aspect is the creator aspect of your being. But here's what most fail to comprehend. You're not observing objective reality. You're observing possibility and collapsing it into experience through the quality of your observation. Your consciousness isn't passive. It represents the active force selecting which potential becomes actual. Each time you observe your life, you're not merely seeing what exists. You're creating what exists through the act of seeing. This explains why two people can experience identical events completely differently. They're not merely interpreting differently. They're literally collapsing into different realities through their observation. One person observes opportunity, another observes obstacle. One perceives blessing, another perceives burden. And both are correct because both create their experience through their observation. One quantum principle rarely discussed is entanglement harvesting, the ability to create quantum connections between previously unentangled particles. In consciousness terms, this means you can literally create new connections between aspects of your experience that were previously unrelated. When you consciously choose to see synchronicities and meaningful connections in your life, you're engaging in a form of entanglement harvesting, creating new quantum relationships between events that strengthen your new reality. This is why people who are consciously creating a new reality often report meaningful coincidences increasing dramatically. They are actually creating these entanglements through their observation. The quality of your consciousness determines the quality of your collapse.